Today on the show, we're breaking cycles, y'all. And to have this conversation with us is Jessica Amos, a speaker and mindfulness coach with over 1 million downloads for her courses. That's a lot, y'all. And together, we'll explore how to break free from 3 types of cycles that play out in our dating lives. Generational cycles are the ones we pick up, learn from family, and even inherit that affect how we form relationships and love one another. Mindset cycles, or those thought patterns we can get stuck in that fuel self-doubt and negative thinking. And finally, behavior cycles, or our actions that sometimes lead us to make the same mistakes over and perhaps over again in dating and in our relationships. So if you've ever felt stuck in a loop or struggled with patterns that seem impossible to break, this episode is for you as we learn how to embrace change and cultivate a more empowered version of ourselves. Let's go, Flirty.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, Flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, Flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, the topic on the show today is breaking cycles as we dive into all the ways cycles present themselves in our dating lives, in our relationships. We're going to be talking about inherited generational stuff, cycles that show up in our dating patterns, behaviors, and also with our minds. So if you're feeling stuck in your dating lives, we have got you. And for this conversation, welcome Jessica Amos to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I am thrilled as well, as this is a topic that I haven't talked about on Flirtations before, and I put out a video somewhat recently and got some really great questions. Flirtstagram came through as I'm so excited to have this conversation because I know I am the type that gets stuck in thought patterns, that gets stuck in just repeating. It seems like the same things over and over. When am I going to learn my lesson, universe? How much longer does it take? We've got strategy solutions, so much good stuff coming for you today. But first things first, Jessica, please tell the Flirties a little bit more about yourself, your work, what you do.
Well, hello, Flirties. It's really happy, good times to be here with you.
Mm-hmm.
I actually get very nervous talking about myself. It's one thing to like talk about the work and the cycle breaking and the stuff. It's another thing to actually talk about me. So that's my awkward intro. Let's see where to even start. I have been doing this work of cycle breaking before I even knew that's what I was doing, which I think is how it happens for a lot of us. We're kind of like wake up during the process somehow going, wait, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And for me, it really happened 20 years ago. I got pregnant with my first child. And that's suddenly when it dawned on me, I cannot pass what I have grown up with and what I have been used to and what I have chosen to live with. Consciously, unconsciously, mostly unconsciously, I cannot pass this on to this innocent being. And that was my moment, my first true moment of awakening to this idea of cycle breaking. And it became painful, like very painful, very quickly. And that's when I started diving into, boundaries work and people pleasing and codependency and the secret keeping that happens in families and the ways that I have manipulated myself and others around me to get love and, all the things we do unconsciously to survive as children and as young people.
Yeah.
And I knew that I couldn't give my daughter anything I couldn't give myself. Like we just can't. I can't expect to speak one thing and not live it because we learn through example. Yeah. So that's when my journey really started with cycle breaking. And it was, it's painful. It's like crying on the laundry room floor to, suddenly just being like gut punched, realizing you've been through some shit that you have to face.
Mhm.
And that also kind of started to move into my marriage at the time and
Mhm.
starting to open up to the patterns that I was living out in that too. So I'm having to change things in my life in real time with people that are used to me behaving and living in a certain way.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And again, these are like unexpected by the people around me, even unexpected by myself. And so I had to start seeking groups and peoples and communities that really understood and could support my process of, again,
Yeah.
learning to set boundaries, facing just all of the patterns and behaviors, and
Yeah.
then actively changing them in real time. And I
Mm.
found that what that ended up doing was creating the body of work that I have now, because I
Mhm.
find that I'm a processor, I'm a verbal processor, and I'm a
Mhm.
person that needs other people in order to heal. And I think we all do. We need each other
Yes.
to heal. So I started telling my story and I started listening to other people's stories and putting on storytelling events, which then turned into courses and classes just around these really basic things.
Mhm.
But huge. Again,
Ye
boundaries and self-love. And
Oh.
my company was born from that. It's called Stay With Yourself,
Uh-huh.
which is the practice of being who you are, where you are, honoring
Uh-huh.
yourself in each moment, going through literally, it wasn't until really we were planning this podcast and I started
Mhm.
thinking about this topic that I go, oh, my entire body of work is around cycle breaking.
Yeah. Like a
And yeah,
full circle moment almost.
exactly. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
really feeling very full circle right now as I'm sitting here. So that's the introduction to me.
Yeah.
That's probably plenty for now.
It was a fantastic introduction, and I have a few more questions that came out of that, and I want to quickly say here, the basic things are oftentimes the hardest,
Mhm.
right? It's like
Mhm.
it's the things we know we need to do, like we need to work on the boundaries, maybe the people pleasing that's presenting itself in your dating life and in your relationships, and it's like you're able to identify some things very concretely, but then it's the stories behind it, the patterns behind it, the why behind it, that becomes the true work. Oh my God. And a big reason why we do these episodes and why Flirtations is here. It's because this work is oftentimes it's layered, it's continuous, it's gonna
Mhm.
have ebbs and flows, starts and stops,
Mhm.
moments of resistance, moments of
Mhm.
transformation. It's all gonna happen.
It's all
So
and
oh, my goodness. I think the first question I have for you is around this moment where, so you were pregnant with your first child and you had this kind of, would you describe it as an epiphany or a moment of just like true kind of extreme self-awareness where you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to, I've got to make some changes, or at least moving forward, like I know some things I need to do, kind of what that moment was like.
Yeah, that's a great question. As you're saying that, it kind of, again, I think it happens sort of like waking up from a dream is how it
Mm,
feels a little bit. It wasn't sudden, but it was like now, so you're just sort of now, for me, I needed that child growing inside of me in order to awaken me. And so
mm,
as she got bigger and as I'm getting closer to her birth and I'm going back and visiting my family and doing my patterns, and I'm realizing like some of it was just something wasn't landing for me. And I had all this resistance coming up in my full body
mm.
to just like being around people and being in places that were familiar, but maybe I was used to them,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to bring this new thing. So that kind of started to happen. And I went back to visit my family at one point, and family systems. I don't even know if we need to get into like the
We
details of it, but
yeah.
there was a situation that
Okay.
happened. And I came back and I was meeting with one of my mentor. I didn't even know he was my mentor at the time. Really, we're having coffee. This was back when I was also going to church at the time too, and so he was
Mhm,
kind of an outlier and uh, rebel in the church space at that
mhm,
time. And we're having coffee, and I'm telling him this story, and I'm just racked with shame and guilt,
mm,
saying
mhm,
I should have known better. Shouldn't have said the thing. It was all this I shouldn't have.
mm,
And
mhm,
he leaned in really close and he looked at me
mhm,
and he's like, Jessica, you know that is not your fault, right? It was
mm.
a very like Goodwill Hunting moment for me. And
Yeah.
he was like, and I look at him and I go, what do you mean? He goes, it
Yeah.
is not your fault that your family behaved that way, that you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me, I think was like a very clear moment because I had never, ever been told that. And I'd
Yeah.
also never given away a family secret. It was the first time I
Mm.
had vocalized anything that had ever happened in my family because you just know automatically you're not supposed to talk about it.
Right.
So that was for me huge. And that's when it
Okay.
really started. And when like now that the cover's been blown off, I can't unring the bell. I can't unsee. I can't unhear what I've now seen and heard.
Yeah.
To find out it wasn't my fault was huge for me.
Yeah, it's the secrets that can exist within family systems. And I want to spend some more time here as I think one of the first cycles to really focus on is that of generational cycles. And
Mhm.
this could be, I think of it in two ways. The just patterns of thinking and even trauma that we can inherit, which can
Mhm.
be epigenetics. Like I think I'm not a doctor, but I believe in it. I really do. And then the generational cycles that are observed. So you
Yeah,
observed the way relationships form and function in your family between perhaps parents, relatives, grandparents, and like whatever relationships are present. And you, my gosh, they can very much impact and then define the way we form and connect or form relationships and connect as adults.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So talking about generational cycles, want to hear, yeah, what you got to say about that? Hmm.
Oh man. Well, first off, we should probably make this a multi-series.
I know. I know.
We could talk about this all day long.
Yeah.
It's true. The first thing I have to say is absolutely, this is an absolute true, real thing. We definitely inherit beliefs,
Yes.
mindsets, emotions in the body.
Yes.
Sometimes what we think is us is
Mm,
not us that
mm,
we definitely inherited. I mean, I had a moment. I was leading a workshop a couple weeks ago, and I just mentioned something brief about like your beliefs might not be your beliefs; they might be the beliefs of your family, and not
hmm.
realizing what a powerful statement that would be for some of the people in the
Yeah.
room because I just take that for granted. That duh, of
Yeah.
course. But a lot of times we like really in this process of breaking cycles, we have to start uncovering what actually belongs to us, what is
Mm,
actually true, what is not actually ours, and the inherited behaviors to like how my mother learned to um, engage with her father, my grandfather. She was kind of passing on some of those mindsets and beliefs about him to me,
yeah.
even though that wasn't necessarily my experience of him in real time. And then his experience that he had had growing up and the way that he treated his kids, like so much of that is just like again to bring in some of that the church talk is like
Hmm.
the sins of the father are passed down. It's not
Mm,
necessarily about sin, it's just about like it's in our DNA a lot of the times. But I
yeah.
also like to remind people that there might be some of this not so good stuff passed down, but there's always, always people in our like loving history that like will
Yeah.
pass on love to us. So it
Yes.
might be this over here too, but there's always, always usually someone in there and multiple people in there that are also passing on good things too. So we get to
Mm,
focus on like, oh, it's not all this bad stuff. We need to
hmm.
know what it is, but also giving equal attention to the good stuff too.
Yeah. The duality of it. Y'all
Yeah.
know the Flirties have probably heard me talk about that before. I love the
Yeah.
concept of duality. It's not everything is neither only good or only bad or
Never. Yeah.
inherently positive or negative. There's always
Exactly.
some element of both
And
energies, really.
woven together so much. It
Yes.
can be complex. Like
Oof.
someone who loves you deeply can be treating you poorly, and that's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
questionable question about love, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah. But already, like, one thing that really stood out there is, and maybe this was a part of this awakening from the, sort of quote unquote dream that you described, is realizing like what's yours to carry and what's not. Like, what do you really want to take from your family dynamics and your relationships, knowing that there's going to be an element of healing involved for sure. But a few questions came, or quite a few came from Flirtstagram and Flirt Talk. It's like, you've observed certain patterns of behavior between really your parents. That seems to be a lot of the examples that were coming
mhm,
up where, to what you just said, you learned that love looked
a certain way, and you're perhaps even unconsciously living out those patterns, knowing that they're not necessarily yours to live out. At least with you start to have agency and choice over it all.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Ugh. It's
Yes.
so tough. And to what you
Yeah.
said a little bit earlier too, knowing that once you start to set those boundaries and work through some people pleasing, probably, um, your access gets changed. What you used to tolerate, you no longer tolerate. And that can confuse some people, rub some people the wrong way.
Oh, totally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely want to spend a little bit more time here and how the flirty someone listening may start to kind of, yeah, work through some of that healing and make some
Mhm.
shifts, make some
Yeah.
changes, set some new boundaries. Yeah.
Yes, I love this. On a really practical level, and this is also where I'm just going to plug some of my content. I have
Yes. Yes.
courses on, I have a course just on boundaries, just on setting on compassionate boundaries. And a lot of it came from me and my family system. I have one on when relationships end. It doesn't
Mm,
have to be that relationships end entirely. It can be that they end as you know it. And you have to grieve the fact that you're changing as a person,
mhm.
and so the relationship and the way you're relating to the people in your life is changing as well too. And so that's the ending of a relationship as you know it. And I also have someone inner child work and shadow work, and all of this really goes
Mhm.
together. But on a really practical level, if you're starting to realize that you have cycles, you have patterns, you struggle with boundaries, people pleasing, codependency, using guilt, shame, manipulation, hiding, passive aggressive, like any of these behaviors, you have resentments that are building up for
Yeah.
you. I find that it's really important to create a safe container for yourself for all of these things to exist, and to be
Mhm.
very mindful. If there's anything that you're very mindful of, it is to create room for yourself for all these things to exist without letting in
Mhm.
more.
Mm.
So that's again the boundaries work around who you're allowing to have access to your time, your energy, and your space. For me, I had to cut out a very um, prominent family member within
Mm.
my life.
Yeah.
And it took time to really let the fog clear. And
Yeah.
that's what I like to call it, is creating space to let the fog clear, to really be able to get your faculties back and
Yeah.
think for yourself, and to
Mm.
start. So whatever that means for you, even if it's just like limiting contact with some people. And I don't like telling people like just cut people out of your life, but I've done it.
Yeah.
um and I think that there's something about just protecting your space so that all of that can exist and the fog can begin to clear, and you can start to see things more clearly without more junk being like piled piled on.
Yeah.
That's always like the first place that I tell people to start with this work. And
Yeah.
again, it's not always the easiest because you
No,
don't want to put
it's
people down.
I know. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Like I'll share one example from my life, and I'm curious sort of like what you think about this too. So I feel like from my family systems, sort of some of like the generational cycle, I think I observed and brought into my adult life and into my adult relationships is this absence of conflict, this absence of disagreement, where my parents divorced when I was 7, and it was shocking, and that was really tough in that moment. I was 7 years old. I remember sitting on the living room floor on the carpet. All the houses had carpet then. And my initial thought was just that my parents are never going to be in the same space again. And if one person is doing a chore or making dinner or something like that while I'm playing a game with the other parent, I don't ever get to have that dynamic again. And it was really sudden and it was really shocking. But even leading up to that and post divorce, I never saw fighting. I never saw disagreement. I never saw conflict. My parents maintained a really close friendship and co-parented me and my sister, and still do. But I think what I observe so this generational cycle that I then brought
Mhm.
into my adult life was that, I didn't learn how to navigate or manage conflict, compromise, disagreement,
Mhm.
difference of opinion. And
Mhm.
so here we go, like a true people pleaser, and then you pair that with a lot of the shame of growing up gay and trying to hide that, it just became even amplified. So this is part of my work,
Yeah.
navigating adult relationships now,
Mhm.
working through this shame. And I think a lot of children of divorce feel guilty in
Mm.
some capacity that maybe they were a part of it. And to create a safe container for myself, it's been just doing a lot of internal work. Yoga's become a big part of my life. I've really intentionally had to work to create close friendships, to explore vulnerability and even conflict and compromise within those connections so that I can start to show up differently when I'm dating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really well. Really well. I mean, first off, wonderful to hear some of your story. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course. The
Yeah.
Flirty's like a little personal touch
They
from time
love
to
a
time.
personal story. And also just as you're talking too, it's really funny. I'll give like a little counterbalance to that, but
Mhm.
we still have wound up in the same place in what we're
Mm,
working through. So I grew up in a very like volatile home with
mm,
like anger and shouting and yelling. And I remember my mom, I got married super young, got married at 19. And I remember her saying to me, she goes, if you haven't had a knockdown, drag out fight, you don't know if you'll like last in your
mm.
marriage. And I was like, I don't, to this day, I don't even think I'm a knockdown, drag out fight kind of person. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even know that. Maybe I am, but I don't think I am. But like, that's been but I've also still, like, I promised myself, I never want to be like that. I never
Mhm,
want to be that kind of person. And so I
mhm,
ended up taking an alternate route than you did,
mhm, mhm.
still landed in the same spot of conflict avoidant, don't know how to be in conflict, don't know how to like I get like I shut down.
Yeah, yeah.
I just terrifies me to be in
Mhm,
conflict, triggers me super hard.
yeah,
Especially, just even the tiniest little fear that there's going to be loss of connection, which is so much of what like you talk about is all about
yeah.
connection, and we want to feel connected. And I think
Mm,
for me, it's like, I don't want to lose connection. And so I learned always to just adjust myself to just be who I needed to be in order
yeah.
to, feel like there was connection. But I never trusted the connection on an underlying level. And this is kind of taking it slightly off topic, but I realized there was a point where I couldn't trust the people who said they loved me,
Mm,
because I had spent so much of my life just doing all these little tweaks to myself to be who I thought I needed to be. And so I
yeah,
could never trust the love that was actually there. And so I think that some of that was learned through, just again being conflict avoidant,
yeah,
not wanting there to be criticism, and I had shame about like who I was and myself. And
yeah,
again, you had this kind of loving divorce situation, and I had this volatile situation we still inherited and
yeah,
took on this guilt and this shame. I think some of it's just part of being human.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it's here we are.
I know.
Regardless, here we are.
Here we are doing it, showing up,
Yeah.
and I really feel strongly this is for each person listening, it's our own, like, part of the reason we're here is to do the work and to break cycles. And like, I know the Flirties are cycle breakers. They're not here to repeat the same patterns. They're here to live differently, to live boldly, to do
Absolutely.
something different and really step into their true identity and purpose as a human being. How they want to show up in the world, how they want to serve others, how they want to bring fulfillment to themselves, build connections, fulfillment and connections to others. This is a
Yes.
big part of cycle breaking, as like I really related to something you said where it's like for so much of my life I showed up how I felt like other people wanted to see me, where I was very
Mhm.
looking to external validation,
Yeah.
to feel good about myself, masking a lot of what I was really thinking and feeling. And I feel like we develop, like, what's coming to mind is how the nervous system reacts to change and conflict and trauma is fright, flight, freeze mode. And fawn mode is like a fourth
Mhm.
one that I think is really catching on now. But I feel like you were describing freeze mode, and that's my default state as well when I'm
Mhm.
stressed, overwhelmed, is complete and utter I can't move. Like it's a freeze. It's a complete freeze mode.
Totally. Same.
Yeah.
Full on freeze. And you can't not,
Mm.
you just can't stop it when it's happening. And I think
No.
that's part of where like having some grace and compassion for yourself. I mean, just I think that's also a really good segue when you're talking about the flirties, like how this we are here to break cycles together and break cycles in our life. And just it starts with this awareness, but it also starts with just having a lot of compassion for the process and understanding that literally we are always handed opportunities to practice.
Yeah.
Literally, like from minute to minute, we are practicing. So there's really no like messing it up or failing at it. Like if you feel like you want another chance to try it again, you will be given one
Yes.
again very soon. And,
Yes.
and that's like something you said at the very beginning was, just it's all of these little changes happen a lot of times incrementally and just by through awareness and making just the tiniest little change in a behavior, even if it still blows up in your face, is still a tiny change that's going to start affecting you and getting you to a point where I can honestly say I haven't had a freeze moment in a really long time. It doesn't mean it doesn't still happen or can't still happen, but my nervous system and my regulatory system for handling and holding things has grown with the practice of just showing up and being brave. And that's so much of what it is. It's being brave.
Yeah. Bravery, courage. And it doesn't mean, I haven't had I'm realizing now a true freeze moment in a really long time where, before hitting record and putting out new episodes, before posting a video, I've got some nerves and some anxiety. Like this is still part of the process, but it doesn't deepen into this freeze state where now it's like the mind is spiraling. It's it can be a lot. Like as next I really want to talk about mindset loops and the cycles of that happen within our minds. But want to just echo, if I can use some office speak for a moment, echo what you said. It's like I always transition people when I teach yoga out of Shavasana back, bringing themselves back into the present moment, the physical space around them. We go into sleeping baby pose for a couple breaths. It's where you roll over onto one side, knees come to chest, the hands rest on the inner arm or stacked hands. A moment of transition, reminding us we always have the opportunity to begin again on our mat, off our mat, no matter where we are in the world, no matter what phase of life we're in, one breath, one moment at a time. Each breath really is an opportunity to begin again, to try something new, to do something different, to break a cycle. But it does start incrementally.
It's true. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well said. And yoga has been a huge part of my healing and awakening. When I first started doing yoga, for the first 6 months, I cried every single time I got on the mat. Every class I went to, it just opened me so deeply. And so to have a beautiful teacher to hold that space and to understand like these things is really powerful.
I say let it go, release, let it go. Yeah, that would be another episode.
Right?
I could talk about yoga all day long.
I know yoga's life.
Changed my life. All right, so thought loops, sort of cycles of thinking here that I know I've been stuck in the past. I'm sure the flirties are maybe stuck in some right now. It's like, hey, look, I really want to start making some changes. Maybe I've got the self-awareness piece there, right? We're getting on the same page here, opening the show talking about generational cycles, but now starting to break up some of those. Yes. Cycles of the mind.
Yes.
Cycles of the mind.
Very familiar with cycles of the mind. I mean, so part of another reason I came to the work I came to and yoga even specifically is I struggle with chronic anxiety. It's just a thing that I've had even before I even knew what anxiety was. I mean, I've just had chronic anxiety. And part of my chronic anxiety is looping thoughts, like worry, constantly worrying. And like the whole like concept of worry is like, the idea of possible future misfortune or danger. Like it's not like, but it's sort of just, I think that when you learn to, for me, and everyone probably has their own set of looping thoughts, mine have always been around, again, just wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel protected, wanting to feel seen, wanting to feel cared for, not feeling safe, not feeling protected, not feeling seen. And so, and it's all this worry about all the bad things that could happen, again, because of carrying the trauma and the fear and all this stuff in the body. And what I've learned, and this is also what brought me to a meditation practice. And I really first started doing this work, I started teaching meditation classes and meditation courses and around stay with yourself, specifically learning to stay with yourself through this practice of meditation. And it's not for everybody necessarily sitting and like oming.
Yeah.
But what, and like, but what it taught me as a chronically anxious person to sit, and whether that's like listening to a guided meditation with a person that you really trust or learning to just sit by yourself, is I learned, and again, this is creating spaciousness. So instead of being tight around all this stuff, which makes it feel really full, if you can create an expansiveness or spaciousness around yourself, these things might still be there, but they don't feel as big because you have more room around them. And I found that that's, for me, with my looping thoughts and meditation, specifically sitting and just being the observer and starting to notice my thought patterns, just starting to notice the patterns you're not doing. And the hardest part about it is you're not doing anything about it. Like you're just noticing. And that's the beautiful like work that has helped me, is just noticing the patterns, creating spaciousness around them, and not being impulsive or reactive with what I'm noticing. But again, and having some compassion around the fact that you've been probably unconsciously just being reactive to the thoughts and the patterns. And that's where slowing down and sitting with it, and a journaling practice really, really, really helped me with that too. I read The Artist's Way years ago. Julia Cameron suggests writing your daily pages. I started doing that, and it was really hard at first. And then it just I became a monster. I became a beast about it. Like I just couldn't not do my morning pages. And that's where all the shit just came out. It was the safest place. All the garbage, all the anger, all the everything, the rage that I felt, the sadness I felt. There was nothing I held back. Nothing I held back. And that really helped clear my mind, and the loops and the patterns and all the things I felt stuck on were able to like leave my body through my hand as pen on page. And I had over almost 100 journals stacked up come 2020, and I burned them all. And that was really powerful too, because I was like, it's all that garbage. And I call it garbage because it kind of was. It was dead and living inside of me, or it wasn't mine, or I'd inherited it, or whatever. So these are the first things that are coming to mind when you talk about like looping thoughts. Is these are just practices that have really supported me as a chronically anxious and looping thought person, as well as moving my body. Yoga really helped with that. Getting outside, being in nature, being active. And I wouldn't even call myself athletic or an active person. Like I don't really like running. I hate sweating. Like I'm not even that, but just moving or laughter, or like just kind of like a child distracting yourself, but not in a conscious way, Yeah.
That's
Was that
absolutely. I mean, come on, yoga. Talking about being the observer, noticing. Yeah, this is so much about what it is, and we're going to spend, about how you start to work through those cycles of thought that keep showing up and keep repeating themselves. It's like it's something that I like a visual that I often describe and helped me was, imagine there's a still lake, a still body of water, a pond, whatever. You have a pebble, a stone, something like that. You throw it, you're going to skip the pebble, and it hits the water, and that's a thought. And let's say that's a negative thought, something rooted in trauma, shame, guilt, embarrassment, something. And then that stone keeps skipping, moving about the water. Well, here you're having that one thought becomes two, becomes three, becomes four. And each time it hits the water, you then have this ripple effect where those thoughts expand. They become bigger and bigger. And then, yes, they, of course, they become all consuming. And now here we are. I'm a very anxious person myself. Naturally, that anxiety really amplifies. And then now we're in full on freeze mode
Yep.
because it started with one thought. One thought can lead to, my gosh, a full-on panic attack, possibly.
Totally. Yeah. I gave a TED Talk in 2014 on this very topic. I was invited to give a TED Talk and I promptly had a panic attack because it terrified me. So I had to like apply all this same process to what you're saying. And one thing that's coming up as I'm listening to you is remembering that the mind is really in service to the heart. And oftentimes, even when we're having stuff happening in the body, it's because we created it in the mind and the body is having a reaction to the thought. And so one way to like move backwards through that is to connect more with the body, to come out of the mind, to connect with like softening. Like I know when I'm anxious, I get really tight and tense. And so for me, it is literally relaxing around, like relaxing my body where I can, starting with just my fingers, like the farthest thing away, and starting to relax up and then relaxing into the heart space and then starting to connect with your heart. And that's so much of like what I think we're often missing, and the connection that needs to be reforged is we're cut off from our hearts a lot of the time. And we don't trust our hearts, and we're not listening to ourselves. We don't know how to listen to ourselves. Or, I mean, we could do again, a whole episode just on self-trust and learning to listen and what all that looks like as well too. But when we're connected with our hearts, our mind is really in service of what's coming up there. And so and the mind also, I like to remind people too, it thinks in pictures. And so whatever you feed it, it will throw images of it in front of you too. So if I'm just like, oh, I want to live in a cabin in the woods with a creek, my mind will go like this. And I'll be like, oh yeah, like that. It doesn't mean that's what it has to be. Either. It just means that it's really good to understand also that that's just how the mind works, and the mind is always moving, and what you feed it will grow. And so you have to feed it with something that's coming from your heart, understanding that your mind is trying to really creating a feedback loop with the heart can really be helpful as well too. So feeding it pictures of what you do want, not pictures of what you don't want. And I find that really helpful too. If you're trying to break a cycle and you want to show up a certain way, and I would like to change my tone of voice. I would like to show up with an open heart. I would like to be more vulnerable. I would like to express in this way. If you can, whether you're writing it out or you're able to think and imagine in pictures, picture yourself showing up how you want to show up. That's part of how we reroute our neurological pathways is by feeding our mind new pictures of how it is we want to be in life, and seeing ourselves showing up happy, content, connected, secure, surrounded by good people, speaking the way that we want to speak, engaging how we want to engage. And pretty soon, like life will start to follow those pictures that we're feeding ourselves.
Yeah, that's so good. That's something I think one of the big takeaways I know I'm going to take from this conversation is that the mind is really in service to the heart. I don't know that I've heard it described in that way before. And I think this is going to be really, really helpful for the flirties, as it's like kind of going back to the theme of duality we were talking about a little bit earlier in the episode. It's like, so something I'll do is say, getting ready to record an episode of Flirtations. It's like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling nervous. Oh my God. Like, what if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't flow? My questions aren't good. I don't feel prepared. Like, what if nobody listens, right? All these things, anxiety, like this is still something I'm working through. My reframe that I tell myself is like, Benjamin, this is what an opportunity. Like, you get to be a creator. You get to be creative. You get to connect and bring connection to the flirties and to everyone listening all over the world. Like, what an amazing just things that are possible with this. And so I really try and go there with it, Doesn't mean I don't feel some of the nerves for sure, but I also work with this mantra that, and this comes from yoga, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed. And so here we
Mm.
go, transforming it into something that is more powerful, more purposeful.
Mhm.
Um, and like you mentioned, we got to have some of those practices to just transform that energy, to get it out. If it's writing, going for a walk, recording a voice note, you
Yeah.
need to get in the car, go for a drive, sing at the top of your lungs to your favorite
Mhm.
song.
Mhm.
Get it out. I have sat with it for
Mhm.
far too long, just like sitting in a chair or just trying to force myself to take a nap, and I can't turn my mind off. You got to
Totally.
work it out.
It's so true. No, and that's so true. That's where it's like I can say,
Ugh.
yes, you can sit, but also how many times have I listen to a lot of metal music. I love heavy metal.
Yeah.
Just blast that heavy metal and like just take a drive and scream at the top of my lungs in my car.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that feels better.
Yeah. Feels good. And meditation too, of course. Like that's going to
Yes.
be, God, did you used to struggle with that?
Yeah, yes. I still struggle
Yes.
with it. I
Me too.
still
Me
have a hard
too.
time. Yeah.
I feel like that's the family secret of yoga. It's like, please,
Yeah.
we
And like
still
people are
struggle.
always like, I'm bad at meditating. It's like,
Same. Oh,
welcome to the club. Who's not bad at, like, what does that mean? I mean,
yeah.
there's no right,
Yeah.
there's no wrong, there's no good, there's
No,
no bad. It's about
no.
showing up. It's literally about
Exactly.
yeah,
Yep. It's a practice.
it's
It's
practice.
truly a practice of mind control and an overall enlightenment of transcending the old self, transcending the ego,
Yep.
of bringing more stillness, more
Yep.
space
Yes.
this spaciousness you were describing.
Yeah.
This
And
is
like
why we do it.
that and
Yeah.
showing up for yourself too.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like it's so much, we're waiting so much for other people to show up for us. We want someone else
Mm.
to fix it, someone else to do it, someone else to have the answer. And I imagine that some of your work and my work too is, and anyone listening, right? Like I relate to that. Yeah, just give me the answer, tell me what to do. And I want it to
Yeah.
be easy. I want to just take
Yeah.
the magic pill. Of
Yeah.
course
Oh
I
my
want to take
gosh.
the magic pill. Like this is hard. It's some days it's really painful and it's really hard. And some
Yeah.
days it feels better.
Yeah.
But I felt nervous coming on here too. And I realized it's because I care. Like, I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to show up and I want to do a good job and I want to be articulate and I want it to be, I want this to be really helpful and impactful for anyone and everyone who's
Yeah.
listening. And I want to do good by you because I really admire the work that you do. And it's like,
Oh,
it's
well,
easy
thank
to
you.
to go into this space of making it about me in some kind of way,
Yeah.
but also recognizing that it's really not about so much like me being liked or wanted or approved of. It's more about, again, connecting with my heart
Yeah.
and how good it feels to flow from my heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think
You're
that's one of
crushing it too.
I could talk all day about this stuff. It's
I
good.
know. It's fascinating. Like I feel like, yeah, we could have now done this whole episode on just self-trust alone or some of these
I know.
other themes. My
Yeah.
gosh, we've been talking about we have a little bit more time. There's one kind of more topic I want to get to, and then some questions from the flirties. So we've talked about some of these generational cycles, now thought cycles, and we've talked about behavior a lot as well. But want to spend a moment here as we did get a few questions from the flirties. So when we find ourselves repeating patterns, right? Maybe we have a quote unquote type that we keep dating
Oh God.
over
Yeah.
and over.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
starting to work through some of those dating behaviors patterns. Just
Okay.
in our relationships, in our life too.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm actually, it's funny is I'm really excited to talk about the fact that I have been dating for 9 years.
Mm.
And I've been like on and off the market and
Mhm.
I have done a lot of legwork. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of my story and how this has all played out for me. And it all adds up to what we've been talking about so far in terms of behavior. So I was married at 19 to someone who was older, and I had literally no sense of self when I got married. Like, no, again, it's completely unconscious, no sense of self, completely living out of all the old patterns, but I had no idea, and it worked until it didn't work anymore. And I got divorced in 2015. So we had been married for 17 years and I had never been with anyone else. never been with anyone else. And I was like, I need how inappropriate can we be on your on your
Oh, I can rate this explicit. No
Okay.
problem.
Okay. I was like, I mean, honestly, just like the honest thing is like, I need to get some more dicks in me. That was honestly like
Yes.
the first thing that I thought was like, I just need to like get my numbers up.
Yeah,
And so
understand.
I got on Tinder and I set up a profile and I set it up just how you would think someone who just wants some dicks in them to set up a profile. I did all the best looking photos and I was cute and smart and whatever. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I was literally just choosing men that I really didn't have any interest in apart from that. And it was good until it wasn't. I mean, I can't say it was necessarily like super good.
Sure.
It wasn't like, but it was what I needed to do. And I was definitely picking men who were emotionally unavailable and I was reliving out patterns. It was almost like I was reverted back to myself as a teenager developmentally, where I was like living out patterns that had been stuck in me that I hadn't gotten to live out like when they needed to be lived out. And so a lot of bad experiences came from it. A lot of learning came from it. A lot of behaviors I noticed in myself, like desperation and, like the texting, like I did a thing where I just like was text bombing people. I was acting kind of crazy, like literally emotionally just not mature enough to handle it. And I noticed all kinds of patterns and that felt really, really important. So I think that's like one thing I really want to highlight is just, and I went through another phase like that several years later too, where it was a little different, but there was more I needed to explore. And so for me, like, I see that only as good because it has brought about so much clarity for me. So I just want to bring that forth a little bit, that sometimes we have to just do it until we're fucking sick of it, to be honest. And like when you're done, you're done. And I have respect for sometimes like, okay, girl, do your pattern, like do it. Like if you're going to do the pattern, just lean all the way into it, go full on crazy. And maybe that's not the best advice, but for me, I needed to do that. I really needed it in order to really see that I needed to be done with it too. And then I had a couple more serious-ish relationships that I worked out all kinds of other, and I wasn't consciously trying to work out my problems like in these, but going through these various different short relationships and longer relationships and different types of relating really helped me see myself because I think it really is a mirror. And now I honestly feel like I'm at a place, and I say this like to offer some hope. I honestly feel like I'm at a place where I'm so clear. I am so clear because I've like kind of worked it all out like in the field, and it doesn't mean it doesn't still come up. Like I'm in a newish dating situation. We've been kind of dating for about 2 months. I really like him. I really, really like him. And I'm like not afraid of the fact that I really like him. I know exactly what I like about him. I know exactly why I like it. And part of that is because of this history that I've had with like throwing myself just into the fire and going for it and knowing now how clear I am. I love, then it's all about the small things. He's deeply, 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 deeply kind. And I can see it. And I am not afraid of the fact that I really, really like him. But it doesn't mean that I don't still get like a little bit anxious or a little bit worried or a little bit self-conscious or like run into feelings of worthiness and am I good enough and like all that. So it doesn't mean that that stuff isn't still there. It just also means that I'm more at peace with me on a level. So I don't know if that like really answers your question, but that's the first thing I just felt like it may be important to say. That patterns sometimes need to be played out until you're sick of them.
Yeah. And I think sharing your experience here really highlights, I think, where some of the flirties are at with their own dating lives, starting meeting people that are in different phases and places of their life out there dating. This is why, like, no matter who you are and how you're dating, having those standards, boundaries, knowing what you're looking for is going to be certainly very helpful. Dating with a little bit of that detachment, right?
Mhm.
Getting to voice your expectations, of course, but then detaching from expecting that they're going to be met. And something that is standing out for me, and it's a concept that I've been playing with, is the concept of rock bottom in many ways, where like sometimes
Yeah.
you have to get so sick and tired of your own behavior and your own sort of quote unquote results here
Yep.
that then propel you into change, because you actually cannot keep doing things the same way. And I think a lot of us in our dating lives at some point hit a rock bottom that isn't exclusive to sobriety, to even like careers. Like if you reach a
Mhm.
full low point in your career, I think it exists in relationships and in dating as well. Where it's like, okay, this is the wake up call. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yes, and that was it
Yeah.
for me. That was
Yeah.
absolutely it for me, and I think that that's like, and I was doing all the things you're talking about, as practicing detachment, as practicing
Yeah.
like showing my feelings, practicing all the
Yeah.
communicating, and and so it's like, even though hitting rock bottom, I was still the rock bottom for me. I was still practicing this whole time. I was still aware of
Right.
my I was still
Right.
changing from person to person and situation to situation. I still offered opportunity after opportunity to practice and to practice and to practice. And then there also just comes a point. I heard it one time say, it's either enlightenment or exhaustion. And I think for
Mm,
me, it's exhaustion.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really like a full surrender. And I think for me, it wasn't just like a rock bottom of like, I can't do this anymore. It was a willingness to let go of the whole
Mm,
pursuit to begin with.
mm.
And that somehow was the thing that was terrifying me the most,
Mm,
was the idea of, could I be happy without it? What would
mm,
it look like if I just had inner happiness and
mm.
wasn't constantly throwing myself into this world of trying to find my person and my
Yeah.
man and all the stories and all the things I had attached to that. And
Yeah.
it felt like relief, but you're not
Mm,
ready to let it go until you're ready to let it go. And I think that's
mhm,
also part of what opened me up, and what I even
mm.
feel in my life right now is, I actually, once I started focusing on the inner happiness, like true
Yeah.
inner happiness, and really truly being happy from the inside, that's why it's not so scary to just like someone, and
Right.
to say it, and to be okay whether they're here or they're not here, or however it goes, because I've already developed this relationship with myself that is happy with me
Mm.
and my life and the things that I'm doing with my life and the places
Yeah.
I'm going in my life and the other people in my life, my friendships. I thought the other day, I was like, if I just continue to have sun and water, heat, and a
Mhm,
place to cool off, I'm
mhm,
perfectly fine without a man. And
mm,
it's not like,
mhm.
it's not any knock on that. It's just like, I would rather have sun. I wouldn't, there's some things I would just never forego in order to have
Yeah.
the relationship that I think I should have, or that I've pursued for so long.
Yeah, do you have a couple extra minutes?
Yeah.
Could you Could you say that? I actually need to hear that for myself. Like, I don't expect you
Okay.
to say like those exact words, like word for word
Yeah.
again, but because this was the very next thing on my outline, is this talking about redefining happiness, or perhaps defining
Mm.
happiness in a new way. And
Mhm.
so I think spending another moment here will be really, really helpful, just about letting
Yeah.
go. Just,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And this is, I mean, for full transparency, this feels really recent, but it also feels like everything has been leading up to this point,
Mhm.
in so many ways. But the idea of inner happiness, to me, it's this feeling of, like how I said, I think the sun and the water comes up for me, because I know how deeply happy I feel when I can lay in the sun. Like,
Mm,
I love the sun. I love the heat of the sun. And that for me, so you'd have to find something for you where you're just like, oh, this is my happy spot. I could literally just sit here forever.
Yeah.
It just like even melting it down to something so simple as like, in what moments is there true contentment and what makes me deeply happy? And then also choosing, I realize that the friendships in my life and having people in my life who I can laugh with and be happy with and do things with. It's like and again, I think that as soon as that intention is set, I mean, whatever your belief, I imagine there's, whether you're spiritual or not, I probably identify more as spiritual. I really feel that there's this ongoing desire and prayer that is always happening inside of me that is always seeking my highest good. Yeah. And that happiness and that connection with life. And when we're talking about connection here, I mean, I feel emotional because I know that I feel how true it is that what we are really seeking is connection with life and to feel connected to all the life happening around us and the beauty that's happening all around us and the beauty in the people all around us. And love is coming from so many sources and we're seeking for it to come from just this one singular source. But even just sitting here with you and knowing what a big-hearted, beautiful person you are that pours with so much love, like you are a beautiful source of love that I get to receive and be around. And I only hope that that same love can come through and pour out as a conduit of love for others. And that's what I feel when I sit in the sun or when I get to jump in the cool water after I get too hot in the sun, or when I'm having my morning coffee, or when I'm laughing. I mean, we need to laugh more. We need to enjoy ourselves more. We need to be having a good time, like, and really leaning into the beauty and the preciousness of this life. And I know it's super, 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 super cliche. And I have hated hearing it for years. Like, just be happy, just let it go. And then maybe the person will come or the whatever. But I think there's a certain level of really letting it go because like, you just want to be happy.
Yeah.
And, I think that's my rock bottom was, you know what? I think I just would rather be happy than to be on this constant hypervigilant search. And I think that there is something that is just really taxing for our systems to always be on the hunt and to always be looking and seeking and searching and grasping and chasing. I think that we have to be able to sit and allow life to arrive to us, which is what happens in yoga, which is what happens in meditation, which is what happens when we sit and we journal or we drink our morning coffee or we laugh with friends. It's like, maybe if we're still enough, life can arrive to us on its own. We just have to be willing and patient. And it's that right there is probably the most courageous thing I think we can do. And one of the hardest things. And that's also why we need other people and why this conversation is really, really important. So people know they're not alone in this practice because we're all practicing this together. We're literally all in it together.
Truly. I thank you so much for going into that a little bit.
Yeah, I love that.
I only have just one final question as I want to read. I'm glad we spent a little bit more time there because I had this question that came in and this flirty said, how can I let go of wanting a relationship? I feel like I've done the work, so I'm ready for a relationship, but I'm frustrated with what I'm finding, my experience, worried that I won't find someone, I want love, but what if it doesn't happen? And I think we just spoke to that experience. So the only final question I had now is a phrase I've used sometimes really related to this work and this conversation is the greater the resistance, the greater the breakthrough. So ending on that note for the flirty that is feeling perhaps that inner fire, that resistance, something is building, something is coming, but maybe they're repeating some cycles, some patterns, feeling that resistance. I think I want to conclude the conversation on that note and get your perspective on the greater the resistance, the greater the breakthrough.
I mean, it's like, I mean, I think of the rubber band, pulling a rubber band until it's like super, super tight. And then there's some point where you just got it, you release it, you let it go, or it snaps, right? So it's either a breaking point or it sets you on a trajectory. But I think that, like, I know for me, oh man, I'm such a resistant person, like all the time. It's like I'm constantly resisting. It almost feels like that's a habit in and of itself, to be wanting things to be, I want this, I want that, I want it to be like this, I want it to be like that. And it's like this resisting the isness of life and what is. And whenever I do remember to just soften and relax around the isness of what is here, it's similar to, like, your car breaks down. The sooner you can accept what's happening, the sooner you can start walking, or, come up with a solution. So, or, we resist that a person isn't who we want them to be, or a situation isn't what we want it to be, or we resist that there's painful things that have happened and we don't really want to face them, or we wish they hadn't happened. I think the sooner that we can be like, well, it did though. And it is. And we can accept it, and we can feel whatever feelings come with that, the disappointment, the sadness, the anger, the whatever it is, the sooner we can just fully feel the letdown in a lot of ways. I think now we can open to what is here. There's always goodness here. There is always love here. I think that's what I like to remind people of the most. And ending on this idea of, yes, we're talking, I know so many people in my line of work talk about their trauma, my trauma, my trauma.
Yeah.
How about not? We know what happened. We know what happened. You know what happened. You know what's happened in your life. You know what you've been through. You've been there the whole time. You've been there the whole time. You know exactly what you've been through and exactly what has happened. We don't need to keep reliving it, replaying it, and owning it as my trauma. These are things that have happened. We have to get out of our story of what happened, and understand that there's always been that duality. There's been love there. There's been beauty here. There's always been the hands that are like the unseen hands that are carrying you and caring for you and moving you forward. And here you are today, alive, and we're all here together.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. So
beautiful words. Thank you so much. As it's, that was one of the kind of cycles I had to break, as being this person that is always on guard, very hyper vigilant, very hyper independent, try, my trauma. It actually, a lot of the work is more about being and less about doing, less about receiving, and being able to, I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's like plot twist. Gosh. Yeah. On that note, Jessica, thank you so much for having this conversation with us, sharing this space with the Flirties. Where can they find you? Where you live on the internet? Work with you? Join some of your courses? Please let them know.
Yes. Well, first, thank you. This is just a delight, and I'm so honored and grateful to be here. You can find me very easily at staywithyourself.com. Just Google Stay With Yourself or Jessica Amos, and you will find me. One thing I'm really excited to offer, and I just created this recently because otherwise it's just sitting there. I created a course bundle. So you can get like all of my courses. So if you want the compassionate boundaries, you want the inner child work, the shadow work, the when relationships end, it even goes into relationship with money and energy, which also I think is really huge for people. And presence, and working with seasonal cycles, and recognizing your own cycles, and honoring all of that. Anyway, you get all these courses. I made it $49. So
wow.
It's like super,
oh my gosh.
Super cheap, because I realize I want you to have it. I created all of this from my heart. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people. I want you to have it. I want you to feel supported. It comes with workbooks. It comes with community. If you want community, it does cost extra, but $49, you get all the courses. And I would say go to staywithyourself.com, get the $49 course pack, just click on courses and start listening and seeing if there's anything there that resonates. And if you want to work one-on-one, I'm here as a coach. I run programs from time to time, but it's pretty random. It just depends on what's calling to me. Yeah. And, ultimately I want you to know, flirties, all of you out there, I want you to know that you are your greatest friend and ally, and you've got you. And so learning to stay with yourself, honor yourself, being on your own side in every moment, having your own back, that is my mission and my work in this world, is to help you to know that you're valuable and worthy and lovable and seen and understood and heard, and you don't have to do this alone. And I think that's what, Benjamin, you're doing here too. So really, really grateful to be here with you all.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I share a lot of those sentiments as well. It's like, here to do this work together to cultivate connection. I'll make sure and have all of that linked in the show notes as well. Highly recommend the Flirties. Check it out. Jessica, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Flirties, what do you think? Did we break some cycles today? I think we did. Thank you so much to our guest, Jessica Amos, for having this conversation with us today, sharing more about herself and her work and some exciting offers she's got for the Flirties linked below. I so hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Definitely one of my favorites thus far. Thank you to you for listening wherever you may be in the world, sharing this mission of flirt energy, of connection with me and with each of our guests. Thank you so much for being here. I invite you now to rate, review the show if you haven't done so already. If you have, thank you so much. If you haven't, could you? Would you? I'd love it if you did. And sharing the show, perhaps this episode or another, with a friend, a family member, a neighbor, a coworker. Yeah, someone you want to share some flirt energy with. I'd appreciate it. And that's going to do it for me from here at Flirt Headquarters. My name is Benjamin. I'm the Flirt Coach and Gay Libra, signing off. Flirty. Happy flirting.